Hello there, welcome to the latest edition of VIP Boxing's Bell to Bell podcast. And tonight, when it comes to our main big superstar guest tonight, when it comes to commentators, he's up there with the daddy. He's the daddy of them. I love him anyway, so I used to work with him at BoxNation, and we've just been reminiscing about those mad days where our guest described it as, I think it was edge of the seat stuff when we were talking about it earlier, because it was a turn up and see what happens. But it's Alex Steedman. You might know his voice from if you run in the bookies and hear him commentating and all that. You're still the king of the horse racing world as well, Steedo, aren't you?
I'm more a prince these days, Steve, but yeah, we still give that a lash.
Yeah, and of course, our regular guest, John Evans. John, you okay, mate?
I'm good. I'm more interested in hearing if Alex is still king of Ibiza.
Yeah.
Did you go in October to the end of year parties?
We went twice this year, actually. Twice this year. We went for a long weekend in end of June, and then we went for a week in September. Yeah. So yeah, we had 2 visits to Ibiza this year. Still got it.
And when's the next trip there?
We'll go back next year. I go every year. Wife loves it. So I think music's the answer, isn't it? John,
music.
Steve, music is the answer.
You know what? Whatever your genre is, you might not like it, just love it, just respect it. No, it's like, I can't run off. It's like when Oasis announced their comeback, all these people, terrible, they're coming back, I wouldn't buy a ticket. Well, for the people that want to buy a ticket, leave them alone, whether you like it or not. It's like music. It's entertainment.
Alex, do you like the idea of going to one of Steve Lillis' all-day punk festivals that he goes to in Blackpool?
Yeah, maybe less so. But I've got a lot of respect for Steve-O's musical taste and his commitment to the cause. That's what I love. His commitment to the cause is just second to none.
There you go, John. You can't say a word now. Anyway, we'll talk boxing, unless you was going to add anything there, Mr. Evans.
Not a word, nothing more to say.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've got your clock ready and your strict clock and alarm clock, whatever it is. If we don't know what it looks like, we just hear this noise all of a sudden. 6 quick fire 3-minute rounds of boxing talk, and Steedo is going to start us off. How good is Galal?
Yeah, well, the reason I'm asking that is because I think you have to couch your enthusiasm a little bit by what happened with Sonny Edwards and where he was at emotionally and psychologically. That wasn't him. He didn't box like him. He didn't perform like him. It wasn't him. He didn't want to be there, and we'll talk about that a bit later on. So I think you have to just slightly balance your views of that. But I like him, and when I look at the rest of the division in the flyweights, I think he beats a lot of the top boys. I think him against Kenshiro Terahi, I think that is fight of the year contender. I think he beats him. I think the Japanese fighter is just a bit too loose and a bit too hittable. And I think Yafai swarms all over him. I think Angel Ayala, the Mexican, who's I think the IBF champion now, he looks hittable and beatable as well. So I just think, although you can maybe wonder about what it was that Galal really did and what he achieved at the weekend, given what Sonny wasn't able to produce, I still think he's the real deal. When you look at, John, the rest of the landscape up there with the flyweights, I think he beats most of the top boys. But him against Kenshiro, yes, please. I wouldn't mind going to Japan if they had to see that one.
Yeah, it's phenomenal performance, wasn't it? Like you said, Alex, I think it's got to have a little bit of an asterisk against it just because it wasn't Sonny, like you said. When you consider that Sonny's come nowhere close to losing in his entire career apart from Bam. And on paper, Galal did it quicker than Bam, which I think highlights it because Galal isn't Bam, is he? But he certainly fits right in that bracket with the top flyweights. He's made for TV. I like seeing a little guy who can whack, and I think he can actually punch a little bit because what little ambition Sonny might have had once he found himself in a fight, it got put out of him very quickly, didn't it? Because Galal was on him from the word go and just really beat that last little bit of enthusiasm out of him. But I love watching him. Last week, I thought Sonny was a big favourite going in. So I turned my prediction upside down and well done to Galal, made himself a real contender.
Yeah, superb. You know what? He never gave Sonny They'll say Sonny, I don't know whether Sonny went there injured, whether he decided, there was a lot of talk he decided before he was going to retire, but he never gave him a chance to get any momentum. You know, the little bit, I mean, I was at a show in Bolton, I saw 3 rounds of it later on. I haven't watched the fight in full, but the pressure was exceptional. He never gave Sonny a second to think, well, there's that little glimmer of hope for me.
I think that's a fair point. And I was wondering that today. Even Sonny at his best. Now, Sonny didn't dance. He didn't move as well as he normally does. He's retreating to the ropes. But I wonder, even at his best, with that version of Galal, actually, the way he pressed, cut down the ring, I think he'd have given him a torrid time anyway.
Round 2, staying on the theme of that fight, is John and the corner working with Sonny Edwards on Saturday.
Yeah, we all know in the build-up, Sonny left Grant Smith and went with Chris Williams. And I felt sorry for Chris on Saturday. You know, that's a real big occasion, a big fight. Everyone was watching. That's his first real big exposure. And he got put in that position after 2 rounds. God, talk about sink or swim time. What I liked about it was, yeah, he gave a motivational talk after 2 rounds to try and keep him going. And that seems to be what people are concentrating on. But I don't know if you noticed, after round 3, he changed his thinking. He said, look, Sonny, I can see that you can't do what I've been trying to ask you to do. So now we've got to do this. So rather than trying to force Sonny to do what he's always good at, he quickly realised, right, that's not going to work. We've got to change. And he completely changed, I assume, the pre-fight tactics to round 3. And then it was a motivational job to keep him going through 6. I've seen people say he should have been pulled out after 2, but I saw Steve Bunce put something that summed it up perfectly. A big world title level fight like that, there's no room for sympathy or feeling sorry for people. He needed harsh words. He got harsh words, and he came out with it. His reputation salvaged a bit, because if he ducked after 2 rounds, that would have been really difficult to come back from. So I thought the corner did a real good job there.
Yeah, I didn't see the fight. I just saw that clip that went viral. But a lot of people I've read that Chris did the right thing in the corner. And what was quite astounding, you know, he hasn't been in many corners, given his other fight that Brandon Dayoud rarely fights. And his biggest night before Saturday was an English title fight for Brandon Dayoud against Ben Norman about 13 months ago in Blackpool. But what was your take, Alex?
I was drawn, I've got to say. I don't have a strong view one way or another. I think it reminded me a bit of when Ben Davidson stepped in to be in the corner with Billy Joe Saunders. I was up in Scotland that night.
I was there with you, yeah.
The reason I mention that is only because the criticism he got that night was, I think, in part because there was a lot of punters, pundits and fans who were like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
And I think that you've got to have a bit of context there. I think there was an element of that in terms of the critique and the public opinion. Who's this guy? We don't know who he is. What's he saying? I think there was a bit of that. Personally, I think he tried a bit of everything, and I think he did as well as he could with a situation that potentially was spiraling out of control. So I like John, I think he did as well as he could. I am slightly of the opinion that if you've got a fighter like Sonny, who doesn't want to be there, it doesn't matter what the round is. If he's telling you he wants out, I think you've got to have an element of sympathy for that. But ultimately, I'd probably have backed the call that he made on the night.
Round 3. This is my first topic. Do they have it easy? And I'm talking about, this is going to the younger viewers, they're going to say, listen to that old man there back in my day and all that sort of thing. And if you want to say it, I don't mind. Don't bother me one bit, you know. But Saturday night at Bolton, James Cook was there, great fighter, beat Michael Watson early in his career, had one of the great understated British wins against Pierre-Frank Winterstein, who was 51-1, late 80s or early 90s, for a European title in Paris on a Sunday night. And Pat Barrett was there, and the pair embraced each other, and they locked in this hut for about 30 seconds. It was amazing to see. I was standing right behind it, quite incredible. And then I was thinking, proper fighters, weren't they? So I thought, I'll have a look at what they were, what they did. You know, I was look at boxing. You deal with trainers all the day. You hear all this stuff from promoters like, we're doing some home building where they just fight a professional journeyman. And I looked at their record. In James Cook's first 10 fights, he fought Jimmy Price twice and Mick Courtney, who won the British title. Pat Barrett, 20 years of age, in his first 10 fights, boxed Paul Burke and Sugar Gibbleru. I mean, we just don't see fighters do it that day. Do it today. And we're getting fighters who are 15-0, not just in Britain, across Europe. And they've never beaten them with a record. It's quite astounding. And I just think trainers are too protective of their fighters, especially the ones that might only have one or two in the stable. Am I being harsh?
I think there's a bit of a code. I think you're a little bit harsh. I think there has been, I think the last 5 years, there has been a bit of a culture change. Let's take the weekend on that DAZN show. Cameron Vong went in against Gavin Gwynn. I don't think a fight like that would have happened 5 to 10 years ago. I do commentary on Johnny Clark's top tier shows, and there are an absolute root load of 4, 5, 6-0 pros who are being squeezed together. That would never have happened. And Steve-O, you and I reminisce, and we loved the BoxNation days. John, you were part of that story. It was a hell of a ride, but I must admit, I'd love to get another go to commentate and report and present on those shows, because I know for a fact we turned up and you would look down the left side of the bill and you expected 9.5 out of those 10 fights over 6-7 hours to go to the left side of the bill. So I think things have changed a little bit, personally.
Sorry, never got you in there, John. Steven, what will boxing look like in 5 to 10 years?
Okay, well, the reason I put this question in is one, for 2 reasons. The Saudi adventure is one, and PEDs is the other one. Now, the Saudis, there's a large slice of self-determination, self-control going on there right now. A lot of people are getting excited and it's great. Fights are getting made, lots of money for the fighters, 2 things that we love. Fantastic. But they've recently bought the Ring magazine. The person who's 2IC at the head of that Ring magazine relaunch, behind Nat Fleischer, who's no longer here, is Turki Al-Sheikh. So he's 2IC with the Ring magazine. So how independent that's going to be remains to be seen. And I think the Ring is a means to an end. And I think it's a means to creating a UFC culture that then they can legitimize their own bills, their own belts, and effectively do what they want. Now, hopefully, there's an element of what's good for the whole sport in all of that, but there's definitely a slice of that coming your way if you're a boxing fan. So that's one. And PEDs in sport, I'm just really angry about the way this Conor Benn situation has evolved. I don't think boxing fans care enough. And Conor Benn has never been called to account for those 2 failed tests. He's never had to produce evidence for those 2 failed tests. Whether he did or he didn't, nobody knows. Him and maybe 1 or 2 other people. And he's never been called to account for that. He is effectively getting off on a technicality. So I wonder how the sport is going to look with those 2 things in mind, because I think it's a watershed moment, what's gone on with this Conor Benn situation. Whatever you think about it, it's a watershed moment for the sport, and I suspect not in a good way.
Yeah, but riding off the fights actually being made, I think one thing that isn't going to change now, I don't think fans are going to accept poor cards anymore. I don't think the fans are going to accept paying 20 quid for one main event and a one-sided undercard. I think the appetite's been whetted now for big major cards. And I think 4 or 5 times a year, that's going to continue now. The fans won't accept it anymore. The way entertainment's going as well, I don't think people would tune in and buy it anymore. I just think that's going to change. So I do think we are going to see the best fight and the best for a long time to come. And I think out of everything, that's the main thing we all want to see is the best fight and the best. And I think that's what's going to still be going on in 5 to 10 years. The PEDs, it's a minefield, isn't it? It's terrible. We all constantly hear stories that we could never say on here about what we hear things and people that have seen things and stuff like this. It's been going on for years. It's not a new thing. And I think people have been turning a blind eye for quite a long time now. I don't see how you get to the bottom of it, because the people inventing the drugs are always 1 step ahead. So I don't know how you can square that off.
I was quiet for 3 minutes. Round 5. John, this is an interesting one. Lawrence Okolie moves up to heavyweight. I think it's this weekend. Okolie at heavyweight.
I'm interested in this. Now, Lawrence, he's probably not got many fans, has he, Lawrence? You know, he's hit and miss. He can be awful to watch. He can be gangly, messy, complete off nights. But then he can also be devastating when his mind's on it. And I've got a thing for awkward heavyweights. I like them. And I'm wondering if Lawrence Okolie can become the new Henry Akinwande. I think he's going to be a terrible night's work for any heavyweight if once he's grown into the weight and got his muscle on. I think he'll be able to mess almost anybody about. They won't be able to fight their normal fight because Okolie's so awkward and difficult. I bet everything hurts when you fight Okolie. I bet the forearms bang you, the elbows. I bet you get out the ring feeling like you've been run over. And I just hope he can get a couple of confidence-boosting early wins, and then let's let him loose. Let's let him loose among these heavyweights and see who he can mess about, because I think there's something there with Lawrence.
He's got to make statement wins, starting with saying Muhammad this weekend, who's just outside the world's top 100. Nothing wrong with a fight, good record. He needs statement wins. If he becomes a new Henry Akin one day, he won't be getting big fights. Those people who've been talking about this, you know, Saudi, the best fight, the best. He isn't going to Saudi for them
it's
fights.
Different. Heavyweights are different now.
I'm not having it, John. He will not. He's not, unless he makes statements, he's not going to get in those big fights. Not having it, John. You know, sells himself brilliantly, you know, great backstory, the McDonald's stuff and all that. But no, not for me as a heavyweight in the fights, you know, we're seeing.
Well, I suppose what you would say is, can you think of many natural sitting on the back foot, heavy-handed, counter-punching heavyweights? He is a bit of an anomaly. Obviously, Fury can be a counter-puncher, but they're thin on the ground up there. So he is kind of unique in one way. Whether people want to pay to watch him and whether he's going to put bumps on seats, that's another thing. But that landscape's changing, and he might just be, in a year's time, he might just be one of the guys who's left standing when the music stops, one way or another.
Yeah, it's like the changing of the guard, isn't it, at the moment? And when you consider you've got people like Wardley now who are probably top 15 breaking into a top 10, would you confidently pick Wardley against Okolie?
Yeah, and there's loads of...
I think you would pick Wardley. Wardley would be a favourite, and that's without Okolie having a heavyweight fight. So,
and I'll be interested what he weighs as well, because he started off 225 as a first go. I mean, he could. The guy he's fighting at the weekend, by the way, he failed the drugs test a couple of years ago.
That's right.
He weighs 250 or something like that. So I think Okolie can grow up into a fairly sizable heavyweight.
And he failed the drugs test. I think he was only out for about 10, 11 months anyway. Round 6. Now, Steedman, we'd both be good in it, but Steedman, he sits there, commentates on hundreds of fights. How do you score a drawn round? Now, I rarely score them. Rarely. I try my best not to. But on Saturday night, Kane Gardner versus Reece MacMillan, upset win for Reece MacMillan, cost Kane a British title fight in February. Them rounds were so close, and I always went one way or the other until the 9th round on it, when Kane was doing enough to win the first 2 minutes. You know, it was in control without dominating. He was fighting as almost if he thought he'd won the fight. And then the last minute, Reece comes quite running back, so I made it a drawn round. I mean, what is a drawn round? You can't just say, well, he won the first 180 seconds and him the next 180 seconds. I gave it a drawn round on that. Did you ever score drawn rounds at all? When you're commentating, Alex, you're scoring and trying to bring colour, bring people to the arena the way you're commentating in your voice. Did you ever score them at all? What tends...
I don't have a philosophy, but if I did, it's changing. And I am now definitely scoring more drawn rounds than I would have, say, just a couple of years ago. And I'm encouraging myself to do that. And I actually think the commissions worldwide and the British Boxing and Board of Control should be encouraging that as well. I think this whole idea that you have to try and find a winner of the round, I think it's complete nonsense. I think it's bogus, because you end up with fights that I think you just, it doesn't necessarily bear the scrutiny of the contest. And I think if you can't split them, if it's too tough to score a round, then it should be a drawn round. As simple as that. And if there are more drawn rounds, I've got no issue with it. I know they wanted to get away with that from, back in the old days when they were half-point scoring. I understand why they did it, but I think they've gone way too far. And this encouraging judges ringside now to find a 10-9 at any cost, I think is ridiculous, frankly. And I think there should be more. That Serrano-Katie Taylor fight the other weekend there were 4 or 5 rounds. Half the fight that was almost impossible to score. You could have given 10 rounds. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it should be encouraged, personally.
Funnily enough, I was watching the fight with Kane and Reece. It's a brilliant fight, available on the VIP YouTube channel if you're watching this. And I realised by round 7 it was very close. So I thought I best really concentrate on what I'm doing here now. And it was round 9, Steve. I was watching, and I was thinking, it's the last round, we can carry on. Kane's winning. Reece is coming back. And I was trying to go through the 3 minutes saying who I thought was winning the round because it was so hardly fought. Kane was more consistent, wasn't he? Popping out his shots. But then Reece had attacking those bursts.
That last minute was fantastic from Reece.
It was a fantastic fight. I was trying to balance up whether Kane's steady work was beating Reece's little bursts. And in the end, I couldn't split them, so it was an even round. But yeah, I'm with you. If it's an even round, it's an even round. You can't be counting punches thinking, well, he landed 2 more jabs. I don't think that's the way to go. It's a great even fight is an even fight, and that's just how it should be scored.
Fellas, we're there, flew through with the Steedo. What a man. What a man to have back on bell to bell. What a man. Well, Steedo, thank you for joining us as always. Always lovely to see your beaming face and hear tales of Ibiza. I want to hear more tales when we're not, when I do eventually catch up with you again, and hopefully it's not too long before we do. John Evans, thank you as always. Always do a top turn on Bell to Bell. Thank you everyone for watching and listening on Spotify, iTunes, or VIP YouTube channel. Thanks very much, and see you all next week.
For all boxing info, news and latest interviews, amateur and pro, across the north, click and subscribe. VIP Boxing Promotions. Also, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook.